When most people think of Harvard University, the first images that come to mind are its iconic red brick buildings, professors with decades of experience, massive libraries filled with rare books, and perhaps a certain air of prestige that feels far out of reach. But here's the truth that often goes unnoticed. The real secret behind Harvard students' success is not locked in those classrooms or hidden within those library walls. The true advantage lies in their habits, their mindset, and their methods of learning. Today, I'm not here to hand you another random grammar rule, a short vocabulary list, or a pronunciation trick, although those are useful in their own way. Instead, I want to give you something far more valuable: a system. This is the same kind of system that some of the most disciplined, high-achieving students in the world use daily. And the best part? You don't have to be enrolled at Harvard or even step foot on its campus to apply it to your own English learning journey. Think of it like this. Harvard students have mastered the art of learning in a way that allows them to grasp complex topics faster, remember them longer, and apply them more effectively than most people. And while their fields of study might range from law to medicine to engineering, the core learning strategies they follow can be adapted to mastering any subject, including English. Why is this so important? Because most English learners are not failing due to a lack of effort. They're failing because their efforts are misplaced. They sit down to study, but their minds wander. They watch English videos, yet remember almost nothing the next day. They read books, but struggle to use the words when speaking. This leads to years of frustration, not because they lack ability, but because they lack a system. By the end of this guide, you will know exactly how to structure your day, prepare your environment, and shape your mindset so that learning English becomes not just an activity you try to do, but a natural, productive, and almost automatic part of your life. Even if you only have 30 minutes a day, even if you're starting from zero, even if you don't have a teacher. We'll begin with one of the simplest yet most powerful habits, something that top students guard fiercely because it shapes the rest of their day: the morning prime. Quote, the Harvard morning prime. How to set your day up for maximum English learning. Imagine your brain as a high-performance sports car. If you start the engine cold and immediately push it to its limits, you're risking a breakdown. But if you warm it up, prepare the gears, and make sure the road ahead is clear, you can drive faster, smoother, and with far less strain. This is exactly how Harvard students treat their minds at the beginning of each day. They understand a simple yet often ignored truth. The way you start your morning sets the tone for the quality of your learning for the rest of the day. If the first hour of your morning is filled with distractions, scrolling through social media, responding to random notifications, or rushing from one thing to another, your brain never gets the signal that it's time to focus deeply. But if you start the day with intention, clarity, and a short series of deliberate actions, you prime your brain for sharper focus, better memory, and a stronger sense of purpose. Harvard students call this the morning prime, and you can adapt it to your English learning routine in 4 simple steps. Step 1. Set a target before anything else. Before you even touch your phone or open your laptop, decide exactly what your English goal for the day is. This should be clear, specific, and achievable in one sitting. For example, learn 5 new words and use them in real sentences. Listen to one English podcast and repeat the key phrases you hear. Write 10 sentences without translating from your native language. Why does this matter? Because your brain functions better when it knows it has a mission. Without one, you'll wander through your study session without focus, wasting precious time and energy. With a mission, you wake up with purpose. You know exactly what you're working toward, and every action feels intentional. Step 2. Move to wake your mind. This is not about intense workouts or spending an hour at the gym. This is about sending oxygen and energy to your brain so that it's ready to absorb and process information. Just 3 to 5 minutes of light movement, stretching, walking around your room, doing a few yoga poses, or even dancing to a song you like can improve your focus and boost your memory. Skipping this step is like trying to run with your shoelaces tied together. Your brain may be on, but it's sluggish and slow to respond. A few minutes of movement acts like a switch, turning your mental energy up to full power. Whoa. Step 3. Activate English mode. Many English learners make the mistake of jumping straight into a complex task, like writing an essay or reading a challenging text, without warming up their brain in English. The result? Slow thinking, awkward sentences, and a lot of frustration. Instead, ease your mind into English. Read a short English passage out loud. Repeat 3 to 4 sentences from an audio clip or video, or write a quick note about your morning entirely in English. This simple warm-up tells your brain, we're speaking and thinking in English now. It shifts you from your native language mode into English mode, making your main study session far more productive. Step 4. Build your focus zone. Harvard students know the environment you study in matters just as much as the material you study. They don't work in cluttered, noisy spaces with phones buzzing and random distractions pulling their attention. Before you start studying English, create a clean, distraction-free zone. That means one notebook, one pen, one study resource, and no unnecessary items on your desk. Silence your notifications, close unrelated browser tabs, and clear away anything that might tempt you to drift off task. A focused environment sends a powerful signal to your mind. This is serious study time. When you begin your mornings like this, you're not just getting ready to learn. You're training your brain to enter a state of deep focus every time you sit down to study. Over time, you'll notice that you remember more from each session, need less time to understand new material, feel more confident and motivated to continue learning. The Harvard Morning Prime is like setting the foundation of a building. If it's strong, everything you build on top will stand taller and last longer. Deep focus sessions. The Harvard study secret for learning English faster. If you've ever tried studying English while also checking your phone, replying to a quick message, or watching a video in the background, you've experienced what researchers call divided attention. On the surface, it might feel like you're being productive. You're studying and getting other things done at the same time. But in reality, your brain is performing far below its true potential. Harvard students understand this perfectly, which is why they practice what can only be described as a study ritual. This ritual creates a state of deep focus where every ounce of mental energy is directed toward one clearly defined task. This approach doesn't just make them learn faster, it makes them retain information far more effectively. Why deep focus matters for English learners. Most English learners fail to make rapid progress, not because they lack motivation, but because their study time is constantly interrupted. Every time you switch from one task to another, even something as small as checking a notification, your brain loses its place. It can take several minutes to regain the same level of focus you had before. Multiply those interruptions over an hour, and you've wasted more time recovering your attention than actually studying. Deep focus eliminates that problem entirely. In a deep focus session, you remove every distraction, commit to a single activity, and allow your brain to fully immerse itself in the English language. This is how Harvard students read more, remember more, and understand more in less time. Step 1. Choose one specific task. The worst way to start a study session is to sit down thinking, "Let's see what I'll do today." This vague approach gives your mind too much room to wander. Instead, pick one very specific English task before you start. Here are examples of Harvard-style specific goals. Spend 25 minutes listening to one English podcast episode and writing down 10 new phrases you hear. Read a short article and summarize it in your own words. Practice the pronunciation of 15 selected sentences from a movie scene. Specificity is powerful because it gives your brain a mission, and missions demand focus. Step 2. Use the time block method. Many Harvard students use a study technique similar to the Pomodoro method, but they follow it with intense discipline. The method is simple. 1. Choose a set time for pure focus, usually 25 to 50 minutes. 2. During that time, commit to 0 distractions. No phone, no social media, no multitasking. 3. After the time is up, take a short 5-minute break to rest your brain. This method works because the brain is not designed to maintain intense concentration for hours without rest. By working in focused bursts, you get maximum productivity without burning out. Step 3. Immerse yourself fully in English. During a deep focus session, Harvard students surround themselves with their subject. For English learners, this means using study materials that are entirely in English. Thinking in English, even during breaks. For example, replaying a new phrase in your mind. Avoiding a complete switch back to your native language until the study session is over. This level of immersion helps your brain stay in English mode, so you absorb and process the language naturally. Step 4. End with an output. One of the key differences between average learners and high performers is that high performers don't end their study sessions with just input. They end with output, producing something based on what they've just learned. For example, if you listen to a podcast, explain the main ideas aloud without looking at notes. If you read a passage, summarize it in your own words. If you learned new vocabulary, create original sentences using those words. This step forces your brain to retrieve and use information, which strengthens your memory and builds confidence in real communication. When you practice deep focus sessions regularly, you'll start noticing dramatic changes. You'll learn more in a single focused hour than you used to learn in 3 distracted ones. You'll remember your lessons for longer periods without constant review. You'll begin to treat your English study as a serious, high-value activity, not just something to squeeze in when you have time. Deep focus turns ordinary study into deliberate practice, and deliberate practice is the path to mastery. Active recall, the memory multiplier that Harvard students swear by. If you've ever read through your English notes multiple times and still found yourself forgetting the material within a few days, you've experienced the limitations of passive review. This is when you look at the information repeatedly, hoping it will somehow stick. Harvard students rarely rely on this method alone. Instead, they use a scientifically proven learning technique called active recall, which forces the brain to pull information from memory rather than simply reread it. The science behind active recall. When you retrieve information from memory, you're strengthening the neural pathways connected to that knowledge. Think of it like walking through a grassy field. Each time you take the same path, the grass becomes more flattened, and the path becomes clearer. The more you recall something without looking at it, the more deeply embedded it becomes in your mind. For English learners, active recall is like adding a turbo boost to your memory. Instead of just knowing something in the moment, you'll be able to recall and use it weeks later, even in high-pressure situations like conversations or presentations. Step 1. Learn something small. Active recall works best when you start with small, manageable chunks of information. For English learning, this could be 5 new vocabulary words, 3 grammar structures, a short paragraph from a news article or story. The key here is to keep it small so you can recall it completely without overwhelming your brain. Step 2. Close the book or turn off the screen. Here's where most learners go wrong. They keep the material in front of them and reread it until they feel they've memorized it. But that feeling of familiarity is deceptive. Harvard students close their books, put away their notes, and test themselves immediately after learning something. For example, if you just learned 5 new words, write them down without looking at your notes. If you read a paragraph, explain its main points aloud from memory. This forces your brain to work harder, which strengthens the memory. Step 3. Self-testing throughout the learning process. Testing yourself shouldn't be something you only do at the end of your learning session. It should happen during the learning. For English learners, self-testing can take many forms. Listen to a sentence, pause the audio, and repeat it without looking at the transcript. Cover the English side of a flashcard and try to recall the word. Ask yourself, what were the 5 new phrases I just heard? This way, you're not just passively consuming material, you're actively engaging with it. Step 4. Use spaced repetition. One of the biggest secrets to long-term memory is when you review something. Harvard students use spaced repetition, meaning they review the same material at increasing intervals. For example, learn something today. Recall it after 10 minutes. Recall it again the next day. Recall it again after 3 days. Recall it again after a week. This schedule works with your brain's natural forgetting curve by refreshing the memory just before it fades. Why active recall works so well for English? If you rely only on reading, listening, and watching, you'll forget a large portion of what you've learned in a matter of days. But if you use active recall, you'll train your brain to retrieve and use information on demand, the exact skill you need for speaking fluently. You'll notice improvements like words coming to your mind faster in conversation, better retention of grammar structures without conscious thinking, the ability to recall phrases even weeks later without repeated exposure. Harvard students love this method because it's efficient. You don't need to spend hours reviewing. You just need to recall at the right times. When you make active recall a daily habit, your learning sessions stop feeling like they vanish into thin air. Instead, every minute you study builds a stronger, more permanent foundation for your English skills. Learning by teaching. Turning understanding into mastery. There's a famous saying often credited to Albert Einstein. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. This is not just a clever quote. It's a truth that top Harvard students live by. They know that true mastery of a subject doesn't come from reading about it or listening to someone explain it. It comes from being able to teach it clearly to someone else. For English learners, this concept is a game changer. You might think that teaching is something you can only do after you've reached an advanced level, but the opposite is true. Teaching, even when you're still learning, forces your brain to process the material more deeply, organize your thoughts clearly, and identify any gaps in your understanding. Why teaching makes you learn faster. When you teach something, you're engaging multiple parts of your brain at once. Memory recall, You have to retrieve the information without looking at notes. Language organization. You must choose the right words to explain the concept. Self-monitoring. You listen to yourself and spot mistakes or unclear explanations. This transforms passive knowledge, things you've heard or read, into active ability, something you can use naturally in conversation. Step 1. Learn something small. Just like an active recall, start with a small piece of English learning. This could be a grammar rule, such as the present perfect tense, 5 or 6 new vocabulary words, a short story or paragraph. The goal is to focus on a single contained topic so you can teach it without feeling overwhelmed. Step 2. Put away your notes. Once you've learned the material, close your book or turn off your screen. The point of teaching is to explain from memory, not to read from a script. This forces your brain to work harder, which strengthens your learning. Step 3. Teach out loud. Pretend you're explaining the topic to a beginner who knows nothing about English. Speak slowly and clearly, breaking the idea into simple parts. Imagine that your student is asking questions and try to answer them in a way they would understand. For example, if you're teaching the present perfect tense, you might say, "The present perfect tense is used when an action happened at some time before now, but we don't say exactly when. For example, I have visited Paris. We don't know when. It just happened at some point in the past." If you get stuck, that's a sign you need to review that part of the lesson. Step 4. Teach in writing. After you've explained the concept out loud, write it down as if you're creating a mini lesson for a friend. Writing forces you to organize your thoughts logically and express them clearly. This step is especially useful for English learners because it combines speaking, writing, and vocabulary practice all in one. Step 5. Repeat over days. The more you teach the same concept, the more naturally it will come to you. At first, you might hesitate or search for words, but after teaching it a few times, both aloud and in writing, you'll notice that the explanation flows without effort. That's the point where you've truly mastered the material. The hidden benefit. Confidence. One of the biggest challenges for English learners is speaking with confidence. Teaching is a confidence-building exercise because it gives you repeated practice explaining ideas out loud. Over time, you stop thinking, "I hope I remember this," and start thinking, "I can explain this easily." By making learning through teaching a regular habit, you'll notice 3 big changes. 1. You'll understand English concepts more deeply. 2. You'll speak more fluently when discussing those concepts. 3. You'll spot and fix your weak areas much faster. You don't need a classroom or a real student to do this. You just need a willingness to pretend, to explain, and to make your learning active instead of passive. Reading like a scholar. The Harvard method for expanding vocabulary and understanding. Reading is one of the most powerful tools for mastering English, but here's the problem. Most learners approach it the wrong way. They treat reading as a race, focusing on finishing the material rather than truly understanding it. Harvard students, on the other hand, read with precision, depth, and strategy. They know that the value of reading isn't in the number of pages covered, but in the quality of comprehension and retention. When you read like a scholar, you transform every reading session into an active learning experience. You not only absorb new vocabulary, but you also improve your grammar naturally, strengthen your comprehension, and train your brain to think in English. Step 1. Choose the right material. The first mistake many English learners make is reading texts that are either too easy or far too difficult. If it's too easy, you won't challenge yourself enough to grow. If it's too hard, you'll feel frustrated and give up. Harvard students apply a simple rule. Choose material that you understand about 70–80% of without help. That way you'll encounter new words and sentence structures, but not so many that you get lost. Good options for English learners include short news articles, stories written for language learners, English blogs or magazines on topics you already enjoy. This balance keeps you engaged while pushing your skills forward. Step 2. Read actively, not passively. Passive reading is when your eyes move across the words, but your mind drifts elsewhere. Active reading, on the other hand, is a conversation between you and the text. When reading actively, you highlight or underline new words, mark useful phrases, pause to ask yourself, do I fully understand this sentence? Harvard students constantly interact with the text this way, ensuring they're not just looking at words but actually processing them. Step 3. Take notes the Harvard way. While reading, keep a notebook handy and write down. 1. New vocabulary include the definition and an example sentence from the text. 2. Interesting phrases, especially ones you could use in conversation or writing. 3. Your own thoughts, reactions, opinions, or questions about what you're reading. By doing this, you transform reading from a passive activity into a rich learning session. You also create a personalized bank of words and phrases you can review later. Step 4. Summarize in your own words. When you finish a section, close the book or article and explain what you just read, either aloud or in writing. This forces you to recall the information and restructure it in a way that makes sense to you. For example, if you read a news article about climate change, you might say, the article explained how rising sea levels are affecting coastal cities. It gave examples of flooding in Miami and New York and mentioned that government planning is necessary to prepare for the future. This step improves both comprehension and long-term memory. Step 5. Apply new words immediately. Learning a new word is useless unless you use it, Right after reading, make 2 or 3 original sentences with your new vocabulary. This signals to your brain, this word is important. Keep it. If you learned the word resilient from your reading, you might write, "My grandmother is very resilient. She always bounces back from challenges." Plants in the desert are resilient because they survive with little water. The faster you apply a new word, the more likely it is to stick. Why reading like a scholar works. When you read this way, you get multiple benefits at once. You learn vocabulary and context, which makes it easier to remember. You see correct grammar and action repeatedly, helping you absorb it naturally. You collect ready-to-use phrases and ideas for speaking and writing. Harvard students who read actively and strategically often outperform their peers in both written and spoken communication because they're constantly feeding their minds with high-quality language. Speaking through immersion. The Harvard Conversation Strategy. One of the most common mistakes English learners make is thinking that speaking is something you do after you've learned enough. They wait until they've memorized enough grammar, built a large vocabulary, or feel ready. The problem is, that day rarely comes, because speaking is not the final step in learning English. It's part of the learning process itself. Harvard students know this well. When they study a new subject, they immerse themselves in it from day one. They don't wait until they feel confident. They build confidence by using the material immediately. For English learners, this means surrounding yourself with the language daily, not just reading or listening, but speaking it actively, even if it's only to yourself at first. Step 1. Replace your daily input with English. Immersion doesn't require living in an English-speaking country. You can create your own English environment wherever you are. From the moment you wake up, replace as much of your normal input as possible with English. Change your phone's language settings to English. Listen to English music playlists. Follow social media accounts that post in English. Read news or articles in English instead of your native language. The more your brain hears and sees English, the faster it adapts. Step 2. Use the shadowing technique. Shadowing is a powerful speaking exercise used in advanced language training at top universities. The idea is simple. 1. Play a short English audio or video. 2. As soon as the speaker talks, repeat at the same time, matching their tone, speed, and pronunciation as closely as possible. The goal is not perfect translation in your head. It's about training your mouth and brain to work together in real time. Shadowing strengthens pronunciation, rhythm, and listening comprehension all at once. Step 3. Speak daily, even if you're alone. Harvard students are constantly talking about what they're learning, whether in study groups or casual conversations. As an English learner, you can do the same, even without a partner. Some ideas. Talk to yourself in the mirror for 5 minutes each morning. Describe your surroundings out loud in English. Record a short voice note about your day and listen back to hear areas for improvement. The key is consistency. Don't let a single day pass without your mouth producing English words. Step 4. Engage in real conversations. While solo practice is essential, nothing replaces interaction with another person. You can join an online speaking group. Find a language partner through apps or social media. Practice with a friend who also wants to improve their English. The goal is not perfect grammar, but clear, real communication. Over time, you'll stop translating in your head and start responding naturally. Breaking the fear barrier. The first few times you speak English with others, you may feel nervous, slow, or self-conscious. That's normal. But daily immersion breaks this barrier by making speaking feel like a normal activity instead of a special event. Eventually, you'll notice that your responses are faster. You understand spoken English more easily. You feel confident even in spontaneous conversations. Speaking immersion works because it trains your brain to use English as a tool for communication, not just a subject to study. And the earlier you start, the faster you progress. Consistency over intensity. The Harvard Success Rule. If there's one trait that truly separates Harvard's top-performing students from the rest, it's not just intelligence, resources, or even study techniques. It's discipline. They understand that long-term success is built on steady, consistent effort rather than short bursts of extreme activity. Many English learners make the same mistake. They study intensively for a week, sometimes hours every day, then take a break for days or weeks. This stop-start pattern is a progress killer. The brain forgets what was learned during the gap, and each new start feels like starting over. Harvard students avoid this by committing to regular, sustainable learning sessions, no matter how busy their lives get. Step 1. Set a minimum daily standard. Instead of aiming for marathon study sessions, set a minimum amount of English practice you will do every single day. No exceptions. This could be 10 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of speaking practice, reviewing yesterday's vocabulary list. Even on your busiest day, you can meet this small target. The purpose isn't to make huge progress on busy days. It's to keep the chain of learning unbroken. Step 2. Create a fixed study schedule. Harvard students treat study time as an unmovable appointment, not something to fit in if there's time. For you, this might mean reviewing vocabulary every morning after breakfast, practicing speaking every evening at 7 p.m., reading in English before bed. When study sessions are built into your daily routine, they become habits, and habits are harder to break than good intentions. Step 3. Track your progress. There's a motivational power in seeing your progress. Write down what you studied each day, whether in a notebook or on a calendar. As the days build up, you'll see a visual streak that you won't want to break. Missing a day will feel like breaking a winning streak, and your brain will naturally resist that loss. Step 4. Start small, then build. Harvard students don't begin with extreme workloads. They start with manageable sessions, letting their brains and schedules adapt. Once the habit is established, they slowly increase the difficulty or duration. You can apply the same idea to English. Week 1, 10 minutes a day. Week 2, 15 minutes a day. Week 3, 20 minutes a day. Gradual growth ensures you won't burn out and gives your brain time to adjust to the new routine. Why consistency beats intensity? Consistency keeps your memory fresh. It prevents the forgetting curve from undoing your hard work. It also builds compounding growth. The more often you expose your brain to English, the faster connections form between words, grammar, and meaning. Just like daily exercise shapes your body, daily English practice shapes your mind. Over months, you'll look back and realize your fluency has grown almost without you noticing, because the progress was steady and unstoppable. Final words. Turning Harvard habits into your English lifestyle. You now hold in your hands 7 powerful habits, inspired by some of the world's most disciplined learners. But the real magic isn't in knowing these habits. It's in doing them. You don't need Harvard's professors, libraries, or resources. You don't need perfect conditions or expensive courses. What you do need is the decision today that English will no longer be something you try to learn. It will be something you live, practice, and master with the same seriousness Harvard students give their own studies. If you follow these habits daily, you'll notice faster thinking in English, more confidence in speaking, the ability to recall and use what you've learned with ease. Your journey to mastery starts now. One habit, one session, one day at a time.